Okay, I am. I'm doing something just a little bit different this week, and that is that it's already Thursday. A lot of things transpired earlier this week that kept me in a slightly different zone. Excuse me. As I was sitting down, which I do every month, to write out what are the what does the astrological dance have in store for us as we go through the entire month? My first impression as I was recording all these things on a piece of paper so that I could see it was that, holy shit, there's a lot of possible angst that could be in the air. This current Scorpio dance that's going on right now in opposition to Taurus it's spinning some tales of energies that may not be easily portrayed as comfortable for many folks, and that's in a way kind of essential Scorpio in that if one were to be inclined to not be truthful in what it is that their version of reality is in the zones of interface that they have with others. Uh, it's the potential exists for that misguided perspective on how life can be lived is likely to come to the fore. And that is not exactly the most comfortable experience for most folks to sit with. And I say that because if the challenge, and believe me, it can definitely appear as a challenge, shows up in somebody's world, that what it is that they are believing, you know, as much as possible with their perspective, how things are unfolding with the life dance. And someone else comes along and challenges that because their version of the life dance sees potentially through the veneer of the life dance version that the first person has. You know, you have to ask yourself, am I willing, this is the first person, am I willing to change the parameters of what it is that I understand things are versus what seems to be just a wee bit more honest coming from the second person? That's going to alter the direction that my life is moving along. Not a minor consideration. This is essential Scorpio. The life, death, rebirth cycle. Death so close to the surface, and we just went through All Hallows Eve. We're in that time of the year of Samhain, a celebration of the diminishment of the light as we prepare ourselves, to go out and rake leaves, or just watch the colorful changing color of the leaves as they let go and come down to rebuild more earth upon the surface of this planet. To just make matters a wee bit more entertaining as we do this celestial dance, every 2 weeks right now, The moon goes through an out of bounds cycle. That's every 2 weeks. 2 weeks north, 2 weeks south declination. This is a latitude thing. And right now we're in that northern dance where if you happen to live in one of those areas where you could actually see the moon moving through the sky, you have noticed recently that it keeps climbing higher and higher in the sky each evening as we go through. And this started out of bounds on Monday, the 30th, and will go through until early on Sunday, the 5th. So the whole entire week, the moon is out of bounds. Now, what could he possibly mean by the moon being out of bounds? Well, let me just spin you some images of what an out of bounds moon, and actually this is an out of bounds planet of any kind, being a functional part of this language that I'm trying to portray for you. First of all, it's the moon. How do you feel? What is your internal sense capabilities give you insight into? Well, an out of bounds planet. These are some of the terms that best describe it. Unrestrained, extreme, independent, wild, awkward, vulnerable, privileged, magnified. And this happened on Monday as the moon. I can make the chart go back to Monday. Here we are on Monday. So it was late in the day on Monday. The moon shifts into Gemini and goes out of bounds almost simultaneously. And so Gemini, that realm of inquisitiveness, I'm not going to be, querying as to why things are at a minor level. No, the moon going through there out of bounds says, I'm curious at a level where I haven't been curious before. Are there factors in play that I need to pay attention to that I haven't paid attention to? Yes. So for a couple of days, as the moon danced through Gemini, I became curiouser and curiouser. Having a Dr. Seuss moment here. Who could think the things that are beyond what thinking normally runs with? Moon out of bounds. Can you feel that? Well, here we are on Thursday. Moon's still out of bounds. It's in Cancer, the sign of its rulership. Here we have, considerations of how is the home front right now? How's my connection to my relatives, my ancestors, my family? Is the connection I have to my parents able to withstand this level of out of boundsness, this wild nature that I feel percolating within me? All the while, this week, these planets, Sun, Mars, and Mercury, dancing their way through Scorpio. The Sun, the vitality of authority, the vitality of someone that might have a regal nature about them. Mars, this is part of the reason that I felt the angst as I was looking at the whole entire month ahead. Because Mars basically is in Scorpio for a lot of this month. And Mars it's the warrior in the sign of death. You can see that energy in play globally right now, where the war game, also a Mars factor, is not abating by any stretch of the imagination on multiple fronts. There is death transpiring, and Mercury, the ruler of that out of bounds Gemini moon that we were just looking at, up there in Scorpio, saying, well, if you're going to be curious, don't hold back. I want to really look deeply at why is it that things are transpiring the way they are. And they're doing this dance in opposition with our Jupiter and Uranus down here in Taurus, both in retrograde, which, means that they may not be firing as intensely as they could. But Jupiter is Jupiter. There's a largesse about it. It's just asking us, from the level of Taurus, our personal values, are they significant enough that when they encounter the collective level of value, we might be able to release a perspective on what it means to personally own something, while at the same time allowing its substance to actually act at a collective level. Yes, I own it, but it doesn't just have value to me. It has value at the collective level to others. Am I willing? It's the opposition, remember, going between these planets of Taurus and Scorpio. Am I allowing for what it is that I understand ownership of to actually move freely into the collective level of sharing, where it can actually have benefit to more than just myself? This is the question that is percolating a lot this month. And Pluto, working its way back toward Aquarius, which it will attain early next year for a bit, also has an affinity with what it is that these three Scorpio planets have to say currently. The angst that I was sensing had a lot to do with multiple factors as I was going through the month. But what I'm going to do, because I'm getting such a late start on the astrology for this week, not that there isn't things very relevant happening through the rest of this week, is I'm going to also include next week in this particular podcast. So it might run just a bit longer than normal, but I've got other things coming up this weekend that also will make it a challenge for me to sit down and actually give you some insight into the celestial gents that next week is bringing for our considerations. So here we are, Thursday the 2nd. When I go to tomorrow, the 3rd, you will notice Saturn over here. It's stationed. If this red means it's still theoretically moving in a retrograde motion, but it's about to shift into direct motion. And with the outer planets, they move so friggin' slowly that when that transition between direct and retrograde and vice versa takes place. They sit at a particular degree for a long cycle. And that means there's an intensity that is in play as far as what it is that they are bringing to focus. Just glance real briefly at the Sabian symbol to see what does it have to say about that first degree, 0 to 1 degrees of Pisces. In a crowded marketplace, farmers and middlemen display a great variety of products. And the keynote, the process of commingling and interchange, which at all levels demonstrates the health of a community. That's a deep question. Is the community's health functioning at a significant enough level that things are flowing effectively? You know, even as I say that last sentence, effective doesn't necessarily mean that it is going in a positive direction. You can be effective in a negative direction as well. And my sensing of the astrology for this month ahead is that there is a substantial negative shadow, if you will, essence in play that could have us, and might I say, should have us, contemplating the role that each of us plays in the unfolding of this life dance here on planet Earth that we are about. Is there demand? I mean, we're talking about the ownership thing between the personal and the collective. Is there enough or an appropriate demand that each of us is stepping up to the plate to require of the providers of the things that we want, that is not going to demean our interface with this planetary resource base? Not a minor consideration, you know, because from the Scorpio side, you know, might there be some factor of death in play that is, you know, demeaning our quality of life, you know, chipping away at it, seemingly slowly, or perhaps from your perspective, seemingly at a more accelerated rate, while we consume the raw materials of this planet at a rate faster than they've ever been consumed before. Is my understanding of personal resource use in balance with the collective's level of resource use? Is there enough sharing going on of information that can, you know, resonate well with the living organism of what this planet represents? Essay question. I'm not going to go into the long, which I could, unraveling of that. This is something that you as a soul being must face and deliberate yourselves. Also on this day, we have We have a little opposition happening here between Venus and Neptune. Venus and Neptune across this Virgo-Piscean axis. You know, Venus is wanting to make sure that it's doing things that are appropriate, that actually invest energy into the matrix of what is appropriate partnership factor that needs to be ingrained into my being in such a way that I can live with it. In opposition to Neptune over there in Pisces saying, am I using my dreamscape effectively enough to see beyond just this physical perspective of what is transpiring between me and other people in this partnership dance process? Is there, from the Neptunian spiritual side of the equation, enough insight into life meaning beyond just this simple physical material plane of existence that we are all entrenched in for the moment? Yes, another essay question. Are you paying attention? The sun, that regal being there in Scorpio, comes into opposition with Jupiter retrograde over here in Taurus. Jupiter and the sun dancing together saying, how big, how, enormous am I willing to consider ownership factors within? Might there be benefit to be gleaned in that ecclesiastical level of rulership and ownership that is, possibly trying to get our attention of our position as individuals in this rulership factor that theoretically we do have something to say about. Oh, there's a lot of essay things that come up for this week. Actually, this whole month. I mean, Scorpio's essence of mystery, investigation of things that don't necessarily exist just solely on a surfacey kind of level, but depending on how substantially I am willing to look within, yes, myself, but not just myself. Remember, this is a collective, so into the machine work of life itself, which, even as I say that, machine work doesn't do justice to the living process. We are but a small part with enormous potential in this matrix. And this opposition between the Sun and Jupiter retrograde across this axis should have us asking very pertinent questions about our position in the matrix of life. And are we willing to allow aspects of that experience to pass away so that there might be room for something else to put in an appearance that may have been waiting for us to participate at a level that I won't say it's going to be easy, because much is required of those with much. And this doesn't just mean the material world. It means awareness. How much awareness do we really have, or do we think we have? Or are we holding ourselves back from accessing? That's Friday, by the way. We get to Saturday. And on Saturday, we have the last quarter moon. You guys see it down here at 3 degrees of Leo. Sun's at 11 degrees. The moon moves a degree every 2 hours. So we have, well, actually, we call it 12 because we can see that it's almost 12, 5 minutes. So we have essentially got 9 degrees, so 18 hours, almost into Saturday. Remember, this is an out of bounds moon. So this last quarter is a time for us to feel into the process of how well am I consciously able to embrace what it is that's transpiring right now. You know, Dane Ridger used to refer to the waning quarter moon as a crisis in consciousness, because what was initiated at the new moon, which happened a couple of weeks ago, well, 3 weeks ago, from this Saturday that we're contemplating coming up this weekend, near the 21 degrees or so of Libra. How is that partnership factor, unfurling itself in our own particular worlds? And this crisis in consciousness from the Leonian perspective, out of bounds moon saying, boy, I really want to take chances. That moon out of bounds in Leo, it's something to not take too lightly, because that adventurous side of it is percolating, wanting to, stir the pot rather vigorously. And it is out of bounds after all. Would you feel appropriate trying to contain it or hold it back from taking those chances? And what consciously might be stimulated within you because of this moon, sun, 90-degree aspect that's going on this Saturday? I guarantee you that some things are going to come up for you this Saturday evening that you may not have expected. So, be aware of that. And at this very same time, you will notice that Mercury up here in Scorpio, 2121, is opposite from Uranus retrograde down here at 2126. Almost a perfect opposition. How we think Mercury from that deep scorpionic perspective, really rolling over and over in our minds. Am I willing to really look into the mysteries of life at a level that will transform my capacity to allow the death factor to move effectively through me by letting go of the shit that's holding me back, so that I might be born anew in the next moment? Or, at the same time, might I be unwilling to do such a thing and let the dregs of society pull me down into the deeper realms of the hell experience? And Uranus is saying, don't think lightly on this. For I am going to rattle your cage and shake this thing up like you have never experienced before. There's, how much do you really think ownership is something that you have over something, or is it the something having ownership over you? Not a minor consideration. Is what you have using you, or are you using it, or is it just sitting around? Because if it's just sitting around, it is using you. Wow. The more I think about the astrology for this week ahead, I'm thinking that I'm going to just allow this to be a short one here, and somehow I will have to sit down because there's a lot of stuff that's happening next week. And if I get into that, I could see where I could go another 45 minutes probably without even batting an eyelash. So I'm going to allow this to be my presentation for the week. This is the astrology, and we've got this essence of experience going on for the rest of the month. Not minor by any stretch of the imagination. And asking us very pertinent questions as to our involvement in the dance of life, quite specifically as to the appropriateness of how we are playing that game. Will it be of benefit to ourselves and others? This image that I have behind me today is from a drum circle back in 2014 with one of my favorite shamanic teachers, Hank Wesselman, who passed away a couple of years ago. And these groupings of energized beings working at allowing the development of the shamanic tool to move to depths of energized experience within each of us, to, as a community, bring things through from the other side of the mirror, to be able to be utilized here in the living daily experience of what it is that we are going through always, is part of the quest of what it means to live a shamanic way of life. Having these conversations with the planetary beings, that's a shamanic conversation. It has that possibility, for they are beings just as much as we are. And they have things to say that it might just behoove us to pay attention. I can only offer you my perspective of what I hear the conversation happening. You have to make the determination as to how you want to participate in that dance. So this is all I'm going to provide for this week's consideration. I know it's late in the week, but there's still a lot of stuff going on. So my friends, that's all I'm going to present for you for this week. I know it's short, but it's not like there's nothing going on. Participate, if you will, in this dance. I know I am, and this is why I share it with you. Ciao for now.